Avoidants don't fear you. They fear intimacy. That's the first thing people misunderstand in these situations. We meet someone who seems interested, they pursue us, things are exciting, and then suddenly they shift. They start withdrawing, pulling back, going distant for no apparent reason. And naturally we start thinking, what did I do wrong? But the truth is, you didn't do anything except get closer. And for an avoidant, closeness triggers alarms. It's not that they don't like you. It's that liking you feels dangerous to them. Emotional closeness requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires a level of emotional honesty that avoidants aren't comfortable with. If they get too close, they worry they'll lose control of themselves, or worse, lose control of you. So instead of stepping in, they pull away as a form of self-protection. It's not rejection, it's escape. Escape from feelings they don't know how to manage. The mistake we make is thinking their behavior reflects our worth. It doesn't. Avoidants don't get scared of you, they get scared of how they feel when they're with you. When someone's avoidant, they could be with the most incredible partner in the world, and they'd still sabotage it. Not because the partner isn't good enough, but because they don't trust emotional safety. Closeness feels like danger, even if everything is good, so they build walls where doors should be. What's wild is that avoidants often chase people who aren't available themselves. Why? Because if they're chasing someone who's emotionally unavailable, they never have to get close. It's safe to want someone they know won't fully commit. But when they meet someone kind, consistent, emotionally available, that's when panic sets in. Suddenly the excuses start. I'm just really busy right now, or I don't know what I want, or I'm scared of hurting you. But the real fear isn't about hurting you. It's about being seen, truly seen. Because if you really see them, they can't hide behind their defenses anymore. And that's terrifying to someone who's been avoiding their own feelings for years. They don't want you to notice their insecurities, their past wounds, their emotional mess. They'd rather keep people at arm's length and stay in control of their image. Closeness feels like exposure, and exposure feels like risk. The irony, they do want connection, deeply, but they want it without the discomfort of vulnerability. They want the good parts of closeness without the scary parts of being fully known, and that's why they often come close, then back away, then come close again. It's not because they're evil or manipulative, it's because they're terrified of the very thing they crave. Love requires being seen. Avoidants don't know how to sit with that truth without panicking. And here's where it gets confusing for the person on the other side. You start thinking, if I could just prove I'm safe, they'll stay. But that's not how it works. You could be the safest, calmest, most emotionally intelligent person in the world, and it wouldn't matter, because their fear isn't logical. It's emotional. It's built from old wounds, old relationships, maybe even childhood dynamics they never healed from, and you can't logic someone out of emotional fear. When you realize they don't fear you, they fear intimacy itself, something shifts in you. Suddenly, you stop fighting to prove yourself. You stop chasing their approval or hoping they'll validate your worth. You start seeing their behavior as a reflection of their emotional limits, not your personal value. You stop asking, of the biggest mistakes we make with avoidance is thinking their distance is personal. It feels personal because it's happening to us, but it's actually a defense mechanism they've had long before you showed up. Avoidantly attached people are operating from emotional reflex, not conscious choice. Their instinct is to pull away when things start to feel intense, even if everything is going well. It's a nervous system response, not a judgment on your value. They don't even fully understand it themselves most of the time. To them, distance equals emotional safety. When someone's avoidant, closeness triggers emotional alarms. The closer you get, the louder those alarms ring. And because they don't know how to sit with that discomfort, their first move is to create space. It could be ignoring a text, cancelling plans, or acting disinterested when they were warm just a week ago. It's confusing because it often feels like they chose to change how they feel. But what's really happening is that their emotional survival system kicked in. It's not about you. It's about their inability to stay with the feeling of closeness. What's even more painful is how quickly we start internalizing their behavior. We start asking ourselves, was I too much? Did I say the wrong thing? Maybe I'm coming on too strong. And that self-doubt is exactly where we lose ourselves in the process. We take someone's emotional reflex and make it our personal responsibility. But the truth is, you could have done everything right, and their behavior still would have unfolded the same way. Their walls were built long before you met them. You're just the one standing in front of them now. Avoidants don't usually stop to think, I'm pushing this person away. They just feel overwhelmed by the moment, and their instinct is to disconnect. They don't usually process the ripple effect that has on you. They don't think about the way you stay awake, wondering what you did wrong or how you should fix it. They don't realize how much their coldness makes you question your own worth. And that's why it feels so personal, because you are the one left sitting with all the emotional weight they dropped. It's hard to not take it personally when you're the one showing up with love, kindness, and real intentions. You know your heart is in the right place. So when they go distant, it feels like a rejection of all that love you were trying to give. But what they're actually rejecting is the vulnerability of receiving that love. That's the part they don't know how to handle. Love feels risky. Acceptance feels risky. Letting you in feels like giving up control. And for someone who's been hurt before, that feels terrifying. Even if they were falling for you, they would still fight themselves. They'd still wrestle with wanting you close, but feeling like it's dangerous. And that's why you'll notice avoidants doing this confusing thing where they flirt with closeness, then withdraw. They send you sweet texts, open up a little, then ghost you for a few days. It's not games, it's emotional survival. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And while it drives you crazy, to them, it's the only way they know how to feel safe while still staying connected. The most damaging thing is how their avoidance slowly chips away at your confidence. You start questioning things about yourself you never doubted before. Suddenly, you're double-checking your texts, wondering if you sound too eager. You're second-guessing your own needs, downplaying your emotions just to avoid pushing them away further. And before you know it, you're shrinking yourself to fit into a version of you they might be comfortable with. And that's when you start losing your own center. Their distance is not a mirror of your worth, it's a reflection of their fear. But when you don't realize that, you start overcompensating to fix something that was never yours to fix. You start thinking if you were cooler, calmer, more detached, maybe they'd stay. But that's not how emotional safety works. They're not afraid of you. They're afraid of what being fully loved and seen might bring up in themselves. And no matter how perfect you try to be, that fear doesn't go away just because you love them harder. Chasing someone who's avoidant is like pouring fuel on a fire you're trying to put out. The more you try to convince them of your love, the more you prove to them that closeness equals pressure. And that's their greatest fear, that if someone loves them too much, they'll lose their sense of independence. So every time you lean in, text first, over-explain, or seek reassurance, you confirm their worst belief about relationships. That closeness will trap them. That love means suffocation, and that's exactly what pushes them further away. Avoidants crave space because space makes them feel safe. When you give them that space naturally, you're doing them a favor. But when you're chasing them to close the gap, they don't see it as love. They see it as a threat to their autonomy. They've likely spent their whole life believing that emotional closeness comes with expectations, pressure, or control. So no matter how kind your intention is, chasing triggers their deepest emotional reflex. Run before you get swallowed. The safer they feel, the more they escape. It's one of the cruel dynamics of this attachment pattern. The harder you try, the less they want it. It's not that they don't care about you, it's that they don't trust what closeness will do to them. And when you lean in and pursue them harder, they start to feel like they're losing control of their emotional environment. That's terrifying to someone who's wired to protect their independence at all costs. Love to them feels like something that wants to take from them. So they retreat as a defense, even when they're attracted to you. We think love is about showing someone how much we care. And with healthy people, that's true. But with avoidance, love starts to feel like an obligation. They start wondering, what am I going to owe this person? And that's when the distancing behaviors start. They text less, they make excuses, they suddenly become busy with everything except you. And your natural instinct is to bridge the gap. But chasing only deepens the dynamic. It becomes a cycle of you proving and them running. And the more you chase, the more they believe their narrative is true. Their narrative is, people want too much from me. If I get close, they'll need things from me I can't give. They start painting you as too much, not because you are, but because they need that story to justify their escape. So you're caught in this strange emotional tug of war, where your effort is seen as pressure, and their withdrawal makes you try harder. It's exhausting, and it's a game you'll never win by playing harder. That's why chasing them becomes a trap you don't even realize you're falling into, because your intention is pure. You just want clarity, connection, reassurance, but they don't hear that intention. They hear noise, they hear demands, they hear someone trying to pull them into a space they're afraid of entering. And no matter how gentle you try to be, the more you pursue, the more they armor up. It's not fair, but it's how avoidants protect themselves from perceived emotional danger. Even worse, your chasing can start making you feel crazy. You go from being calm and confident to overthinking every little thing. Should I text again? Should I apologize for being needy? Should I back off or lean in harder? And while you're busy walking on eggshells, they're becoming more and more convinced that closeness always leads to overwhelm. The chasing makes you feel powerless, like your entire emotional state is tied to whether or not they respond to you. That's not love. That's emotional chaos. What's brutal is that avoidants often confuse effort with pressure, love with expectation, care with control. And the moment you play into that narrative, you lose your power in the dynamic. You stop being the person they were drawn to in the first place, calm, secure, grounded, and start becoming someone who's anxiously orbiting their emotional state. And that's exactly when they start pulling away harder. Not because of who you are, but because of what the chasing represents to them. Everything changes the moment you stop chasing their approval. Up until that point, the whole dynamic has been tilted in their favor. They hold the power, not because they deserve it, but because you've been giving it to them. Every unanswered message, every cancelled plan, every moment they go cold, you respond by working harder. You try to be more understanding, you give more chances. And what happens? The more you give, the more they disappear. Avoidants don't actually need you to work harder. They need you to stop working for what should be given freely. Approval isn't something you should ever have to earn from someone who claims to care about you. And yet, with avoidance, it becomes this emotional job you take on without even realizing it. You start thinking, if I can just be patient enough, if I can just show them how safe I am, they'll finally stay. But what you don't realize is, the harder you try, the more they take you for granted. Why? Because you're showing them you'll tolerate crumbs. When you stop chasing approval, you change the entire emotional blueprint of the relationship. You're no longer the one auditioning for a role in their life. You stop being the emotional employee trying to impress the boss who can't decide if they want you on the team. And here's what's wild. When you stop doing that, they don't feel safe anymore, but not in the way you think. They don't feel safe because they've lost control. They can't lean on your neediness to prop up their avoidance anymore. Most people don't realize how addicted they've become to someone's approval until they stop chasing it. That space where you're no longer texting first, no longer asking if they're okay, no longer giving constant reassurance, that's when the discomfort kicks in. Not for them, for you. And that's why it's so hard to stop chasing. Because even though it's exhausting, chasing feels familiar. It feels like you're at least doing something. But doing something isn't the same as getting somewhere. Here's the catch. When you stop chasing approval, they might test you. They might disappear for a while just to see if you'll break and come running again. They might send you a breadcrumb text out of nowhere just to see if you'll jump back into the old dynamic. And that's the moment where your choice matters more than anything. Do you go back into proving mode or do you hold your ground? Because every time you break that boundary, you teach them that their avoidance works on you. When you no longer need their approval to feel good about yourself, the relationship dynamic flips on its head. Suddenly, They're the one wondering why you're not leaning in anymore. They're the one wondering if you're losing interest. And that's when their avoidant behavior stops feeling powerful and starts feeling like a liability. The game they've been playing stops working, because avoidant behavior only works if someone is desperate enough to keep proving their worth through it. What's beautiful is that when you stop chasing, you stop performing. You stop filtering your words, overthinking your texts, minimizing your needs to seem easier to love. You become fully yourself again. And whether they come closer or drift away, you start realizing that their behavior is about them, not about you. You don't have to earn love. You don't have to prove why you deserve consistency. And when you finally sit in that truth, you stop being afraid of their withdrawal. Avoidants are used to being the ones who decide when the connection happens and when it doesn't. They're used to being the one who gets chased, validated, forgiven, accommodated. But when you stop participating in that dynamic, the script flips. They're no longer in the driver's seat of the relationship. And that's when they start asking themselves the question they never expected to. What if I lose this person because of my own fear? And for the first time, the pressure is finally on them. Indifference is the thing that breaks the entire cycle with an avoidant person. Not coldness, not games, not revenge, indifference. When you're indifferent, you're not pretending not to care. You genuinely stop living for their reaction. And that's the part they're not prepared for. They're used to people getting emotional, chasing, proving, explaining. They expect drama, not distance. But when you shift into indifference, the dynamic becomes uncomfortable for them, not for you. They can't play a game you're no longer signing up for. Avoidants operate on a system of emotional control. Their whole power comes from being able to dictate the pace of the relationship. When they withdraw, they expect you to lean in. When they send breadcrumbs, they expect you to bite. It's a push-pull game, and whether they realize it or not, it's how they maintain emotional safety. But when you stop reacting, you dismantle that entire system. Suddenly, their withdrawal doesn't give them power, it gives them silence. And silence makes them nervous, because silence means you might not be waiting anymore. The key difference with indifference is that you're not trying to get anything from them. You're not ignoring them to make them chase you. You're just genuinely focusing on yourself because you've realized that trying to force closeness with someone who fears it is a dead-end street. You don't text back right away, not as a tactic, but because you're busy. You're building your life. You're moving forward. And when they finally realize you're not orbiting them anymore, that's when discomfort sets in. The moment you become indifferent is the moment they start paying attention differently. When you were chasing, they were in control. They knew exactly how to get a response from you. But when you become unavailable emotionally, they lose that predictable power over your reactions. That's when you start seeing them test the waters. They might randomly compliment you or send a, "Hey, been thinking about you" message out of nowhere. But this time, you're not pulled in by breadcrumbs because you're no longer starving. Most people don't realize how attractive true indifference is until they experience it. It's not aloofness, it's peace. It's the energy of someone who knows their value and isn't going to beg for crumbs of attention. And what's wild is that the very thing they were avoiding, closeness, becomes the thing they suddenly have to work for. Because now the closeness isn't free anymore. They can't take it for granted. You're not handing over your emotional energy on demand like you used to. Indifference is also the cure for overthinking. When you care too much about someone else's behavior, you start living in your head. Every message they don't send becomes a story. Every unanswered call becomes proof that you did something wrong. But when you move into indifference, you stop making their actions mean anything about you. Their distance doesn't trigger you anymore. It just informs you. It's not emotional punishment. It's emotional detachment from dysfunction. The most powerful part of indifference is that it makes you magnetic again. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're hard to shake. Avoidants love feeling like they have control of someone else's emotions. It's their safety net. But when they see that you're stable, whether they're near you or not, they start realizing they don't have the leverage they thought they did. And for the first time, they have to sit with their own discomfort instead of passing it on to you. That's why emotional neutrality is so powerful in these dynamics. You're not trying to win, you're not trying to lose, you're just done trying to convince someone to show up properly. And that indifference forces them into a choice they've been avoiding. Either step up and meet you at your level or get left behind. And while that might terrify them, it's the first time the fear is theirs to carry, not yours. What avoidants don't expect is what happens when you finally stop personalizing their behavior. Up until now, their distance has worked because it's made you question yourself. Did I say too much? Did I text too soon? Was I too emotional? But when you stop making their avoidance a reflection of your value, you stop playing the game. Their hot and cold doesn't confuse you anymore. It just reveals their emotional immaturity. And once you see that clearly, the whole spell they had over you breaks. You stop doubting yourself and start doubting them. Avoidants thrive on you thinking you're the problem. That's what keeps the whole cycle alive. Because as long as you believe you did something wrong, you'll keep chasing. You'll keep shrinking your needs to try to make them more comfortable. But when you finally get that their behavior is about them, not you, something shifts. You stop negotiating with yourself about what parts of your personality you need to hide. You stop editing your love down to a digestible version just to keep someone interested. You start standing all the way in who you are. They don't expect you to become calm in the face of their confusion. They expect you to react, to spiral, to overthink, to beg for clarity. But when you don't do that, you show them something they rarely experience: emotional consistency. And emotional consistency is attractive in a way avoidants don't even fully understand. It unsettles them because they're used to controlling the rhythm of connection. They create chaos, you respond, but when you don't respond with the usual anxiety, they start realizing they don't have that control anymore. Most of the time, avoidants are not villains. They're just emotionally underdeveloped when it comes to intimacy. They've learned to associate closeness with discomfort, so they use distance as a way to self-soothe. But that's not your job to manage. It's not your responsibility to parent someone through their fear of connection while sacrificing your own emotional health in the process. And when you finally realize that, you stop trying to rescue them. You stop sending the just checking in texts.